Good evening, it's Jules Wyman here from juleswyman.com, and I've just realised I've got things popping up on my screen, and so I am going to fiddle for a few minutes whilst people join so that because I know it takes a while for Facebook to register that I'm live. Well, I'm alive. I know that I'm alive. But it takes a while for Facebook to register that it's live and also for it to be shared out there. So whilst I am waiting for that to happen, I am going to share it myself. I'm going to put it on my own page. And that's something that you can do whilst I'm waiting for people to join. And of course, as you do join, do drop down and say hello, because it's always nice for me to be able to give people a shout out. But as ever, I'm not going to even attempt to talk and type at the same time, as I always get it wrong. It doesn't work. When will she learn? So yes, I've just now shared that to my page. So as you join, do say hi. Hello, lovely Shelley. How are you doing? I hope that you are well. And you've had some sunshine today, wherever you are. I know it's been a bit chilly over here, but yeah, it's been very nice to have some sunshine, even as we speak, I've got goosebumps, and the heater is kicking in and out, and I'm kind of slightly hugging my drink to stay nice and warm. So, as ever, for those of you who are both watching live and for those of you who are watching on the recordings, you can do the same as Shelley and drop down and say hi at any point, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the recording. And it's always great to be able to check in with you and say your hi, give you a shout out. But if you're watching on the recording, remember that you can still comment as well, because I do get the notifications and I do come back and check in, and so yeah, do say hi even if you're watching the recordings. In fact, I got some private messages last week about last time, the last session that I did, which was really lovely. So got some private messages, and so couldn't give a shout out on screen, or because obviously it's recorded, but on the text. That's text, obviously. So I just messaged them back, which was really lovely. Shelley says, yes, lovely sunshine. Enjoyed my walk at lunchtime to get out of the office. Sounds joyous. I do love it. Obviously, I much prefer it when it's far warmer, and as well as sunny. But I'll take it being sunny if that's all I've got to be able to do. Good evening, G. How lovely to have you here as well. One of these days I should do an interview with you, bring you on and let's have a chat on one of these Facebook Lives. I don't know why we've never done that before, but we need to get that sorted. Anyway, so back to the usual housekeeping. Please do not wait to be invited to join in and type away, ask questions, share your thoughts, your comments, your insights, because it's always joyous. And as I say, it's just as important to do those when you're watching the recordings as it is to do it when it's live. Obviously, if it's live, I can interact with it, but if it's a recording, then I will come back when you've typed a message and I will connect with you then. So, Facebook's doing some very bizarre things. I do love the fact that every time you come on and do a Facebook Live, it's something different that's on here. So I never quite know what I'm going to find when I do one of these. So, this evening's topic is all about how to do endings. And I'm phrasing it like that because it was a specific question that was asked by somebody a little while ago, and they wanted me to specifically talk about what they were doing. I don't know who that is that's doing the thumbs up, but thank you very much. Keep them coming. But I wanted to have a topic about how to do endings because, as I say, the question was being asked, and therefore wanted to follow up with that. Hey Ursula, how lovely to see you. Haven't seen you for a while. Haven't connected with you for a while. Must change that. And the question was being asked in relation specifically because this person is retiring, and she was describing to me, and the question was all framed around how she was finding it tough to kind of think of her life beyond work, because it's something that she spent 40 odd years doing, etc., which many people do. So I thought I would keep it very broad, because I didn't know whether she would be on, and I have messaged her and haven't yet had a reply back, so I don't know if she's been able to watch it live or whether she's watching the recording. So I'm going to keep it very general, and obviously as I'm speaking in general terms about endings, then my invitation as we go through this is for you to, as usual, like or heart the stuff that really resonates with you and makes sense. And anything else, or comment as well if you want to. Please don't wait to be invited. The invitation is there now for you to write whenever you want to. But also for you to thank you, Ursula, and for you to, and I've gone off my track now. So if there's something that maybe doesn't resonate or doesn't make sense, or you're not sure about, or you would like me to talk a little bit more about, then jump into the comment section and do share what it is that you would like me to talk more about, or what it is that you would love to know more about. So yeah, when I'm talking, or when I was thinking about this topic and how it had been framed up around how to do endings, and as I say, specifically, this was specifically in relation to a career ending and work ending. But I think it can span out, and interestingly enough, one of the clients that I was working with today, we had a similar conversation around endings. That's just the way that it kind of panned out today. But I think we could be talking about work or job or career. We could be talking about those things ending. But equally, we could be talking about relationships, and that may not just be intimate relationships. That may be relationships with family members, or even friends or work colleagues, or it's any kind of relationship. Very often when the term relationship is used, we automatically assume it's a love interest or an intimate partner. But in fact, relationships, we relate to everybody in every single day in some way, shape or form. So relationships in the broadest sense of that, so it could be any kind of relationship that might be coming to an end. Equally, it could be the end of a year, which obviously is only a few months off now, or the end of a month just finished, or the end of the day, which is coming to a close here in the UK, or week, etc., etc., etc. Good evening, Caroline. And also the ultimate ending of, I'm going to say life, but I'm not sure that is an ending, and I'll explain a little bit more about why I'm thinking that a little bit later. But basically, to me, and if you can think of any more, then please put them down there. But they were the main ones that sprung to my mind. But it could be. It could be, for example, that you have done something for a certain length of time, and then physically, for some reason, or a change of location, you're not able to do that anymore. So it might be you used to be part of a particular club or social group or religion, and you've moved areas. So there's an ending of that when you've moved location. Or it may be when you have been playing a sport, for example, and let's say you've sustained an injury, which has then prevented you from being able to continue to play that sport even. So there's so many different ways that we interact and perceive things as being endings. So if there's anything else that you think, oh yeah, that could be perceived as an ending, then this isn't a definitive list. But please do to drop them in below. But I personally think that part of the challenge as to why we find it such a challenge / struggle to face endings is because we see them, we see it as a cut-off. and we don't perceive that there's any continuation. Now, this is why that's why I was saying ending could be an ending of life. But for me, I don't believe in that. My beliefs are around that life continues. Birth and death are the two things that I think happen, but life continues on throughout that. And I think that most seasons, but definitely this time of the year, it's easy to see that because you've got the leaves falling off the trees, you've got most of the plants are kind of retracting and reserving their energy and pulling back, and it sometimes gets referred to in horticulture as things are dying off. But they die off, but life continues underneath, and then there's regrowth in the following year. So I think I know it's a very simplistic way of looking at it in some senses, but for me, there's always a continuation, and I think that's one of the challenges that we have, is that when our focus tends to be on something being cut off, and we perceive it as, and the way I hear it being described in conversation with clients is that they'll say that I've lost my job or my career or my partner or my friendship, or so there's a sense of loss, something cutting, that cutting away from, or it may be described as being an emptiness, or that part is missing, and so we perceive this closure and also this gap, and that gets our focus, that gets our attention, and it becomes, or can become, quite consuming. It can absorb everything in and draw everything into that being our sole focus, when in actual fact what we can do is take a step back from that and have an acknowledgement of that thing, whatever that thing is, having ended in whatever way, shape or form that ending has come about. So what my process is, thoughts, both for myself but also with clients, what I think about and what I work with, is recognizing that this may be something coming to an end. So it might be the close of a chapter or close of a book in some way, shape or form. But it's also, so it's about not necessarily neatly tying that off, because that's not always possible. But it is about creating some sense of that closure, for want of a better term, so that I can broaden my spectrum and recognize it's not just this one thing that's ended. Yes, that one thing may have come to an end, but I wonder what else is possible. I wonder what else that's opening up to. I wonder what else that's giving support for. Let me know if is that making sense? Give me some thumbs up or some hearts if that's making sense whilst I have a quick swig of tea. And also feel free to comment as well. So there's lots of hearts and thumbs and things going up, which is fantastic. So I'm assuming that this is making sense. Thank you very much. For those of you that are just joining, we're just talking about endings and how to do endings. And I'm talking about it in a very broad sense of the spectrum. So things such as job, career, work, relationships. It could be, and when I say relationships, I mean every kind of relationships. Friendships, intimate partners, work colleagues, family members, whatever it may be. Equally, it could be what we might perceive as the end of a year or the end of a month or the end of a day, or even death. Obviously, that can be perceived as the end of life. And what I'm saying is one of the things I think why we find it such a challenge at times when we are faced with those things that we perceive as an ending is because we see that as and we talk about it as a very final thing and don't necessarily look as, yes, that is an ending of that thing, but there's a possibility here. There's other things that are viable, that are possible, that are accessible potentially on this other side of things opening up. So something that I found that is very helpful I found it helpful for myself, but also when working with clients, is recognizing that sometimes even if someone hasn't physically died, we might need to go through a type of grieving process because an identity may be dying. So what I mean by that is, so for this instance with the lady who's posed the question, up until this point of her retirement, she's had a work identity, and that work identity is dying off as she moves into this new stage, this new part of her life. So it can be perceived as a grieving process as we let go of that particular identity. And what I mean by identity is about who we perceive that we are. And I think one of the things that's important to recognize is that our brain creates these identities, and it tries to hold on to one particular identity and say, kind of stick its stake in the ground and go, this is who I am. There was lots of thumbs going up at that point. I'm not quite sure what they were for, but thank you. But we tend to we want to stick our stake in the ground because the brain wants its certainty, or it wants it's the sameness. It's, I know this, I know who I am. But we aren't the same. You know, every 7 years, I think it is, in total, all of our cells in our bodies change. So our bodies are constantly changing, if nothing else. And whether we agree with or like the aging process, it happens. And even if somebody has lots of plastic surgery and all of that kind of stuff, then the insides are still going through their aging process. So they're always changing. We're not one solitary person. You know, you can look back at a photo of you when you were 6, or when you were 14, or when you were 22, or when you were 37, or whenever. And I don't know about you, but I can quite often look at those photos and go, wow, look at how different I am. And not just physically, but look at what I've been through to get where I am now. And therefore those experiences that we have on a day-to-day basis, they change us. They impact our knowledge, our experience, and how we interact with life. So therefore, there's far more constant change happening anyway than we've maybe given ourselves credit for. And that identity shift, I don't know why I'm doing some kind of like Tai Chi moves here. I don't know what that was meant to be. But we've got this identity shift that's constantly going on. And so really and truly when something is ending, what we've got really is those leaves falling from the tree so that they can hit the ground. That identity can be, can decompose, I suppose, and become one with the earth, if you want to put it that way, to then feed the tree to help it grow more. So in actual fact, by that aspect dying away, that entity, that identity rather, dying away, then actually it can help feed the other side. But it's not denying that there might be a period of time where we need to do a bit of grieving process. And one of the things that you can start to do to help yourself in that process is to do some reviews of, good evening for those of you that are just joining, by the way. Do drop down and say hi and let me know if things are making sense. What we can do to help us in that is to start to look at the period in time as to what you've learned, what you've gained from those experiences. So if we were looking at it purely in a work perspective, because as I say, this lady was asking in relation to retiring, and if we were looking at in conjunction with that, so when I left the theatre, for example, 15 years ago, I didn't do this process, and unbeknownst to me, I hadn't given myself that time to process. This identity of stage manager had gone, and I found myself in this sort of like lost, big-eyed, where am I world, not really knowing what to do next, or where to go next, or how to be next. And what I can look at now is if I'd have taken that time to reflect and go, okay, what have I enjoyed about being in that environment? What have I learned? Where have I grown? What would I like to develop and grow next? How would that be? It gives you the opportunity then to start to recognize what you're taking with you. Because very often by focusing solely on this is the end, we've not acknowledged or recognised that the actual functionality in this instance of going to work may come to an end. But all of what you've learned about yourself and all of what you gained from, it might be work colleagues or skills in a particular job, they can come with you and you may never use them again. However, they are still there. You've got those. And again, I know, and it took me quite some time before I started to recognise and acknowledge the skills and the experience and expertise that I had learned through the role of being a stage manager for 10 years. So much of it I could bring out into this other, I was going to say normal world, but I think it's just as insane as the theatre world, just shows up in a different way, is that there are so many things that I can bring across and use, and there's a lot of different ways that I can do that. And I'm pretty sure that with most, if not all, jobs, careers, that you can do that in some way, shape or form, is bring those learnings across. And you can start to look at also what is possible, what else is possible, what else is possible now. So it might not be about utilising those skills, for example, from a work environment. You may not have or want to be using those. So what else is possible? What else would I like to be doing? Or how else would I like to be spending my time? Or what have I learned from that experience that I can apply into my everyday life? And the more you start to look at questions like that, you can look at that in a very different way. And it's the same when relationships come to an end. And I have I do have quite a strong view that I think many of us go very quickly from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, and be that an intimate partner, or be that friendships, or be that work, actually, because a lot of people will do the same thing. You may have heard me say before that when people come to me for coaching because they want to get out of the job they hate, the first few sessions I will be focusing on how we can get them to fall in love with the work that they do so that they can leave from a happy place. And I would say at least 70% of the people that I've worked with actually fall back in their jobs, in love with their jobs again. If they ever were in love with their job, first of all, of course. But they then have a very, very different view on the work that they do. So that's what's so important. And I think that we can do the same when we're moving from relationship to relationship. We're not really giving ourselves any time to, okay, what have I learned from this? And how can I apply that? And I don't mean that never trust men or never trust women or all men are arseholes or all women are arseholes. I'm not talking about that stuff. But just, you know what, how did I show up in that? What did I bring? What do I need to learn about myself? What do I need to see so that I don't do those same behaviours again? Or what behaviours do I need to remember to do again? So that we can have this, whilst there may be a period of grief, we can have this smoother, I'm not saying it's definitely going to be smooth, but a smoother transition from that one place to the next. Because if you think about it, it's very rare that I'm trying to think if I've ever seen it happen, and I don't know whether I have, and I do watch quite a lot of nature programs. I don't know whether there is I'm sure if there is, somebody will let me know, that whether there is a tree, for example, that literally drops all of its leaves in one head and in one go, or whether they just very slowly start to pull all their photosynthesis in, and then they disseminate that, and then their leaves fall. I think it's a slow transition, and it's the same at the other end. You know, we go from summer into autumn into. That's why I think autumn and spring are so important. They're those transitions. Those transitions from one of the extreme to the other extreme, and if we went straight from summer to winter, it would be such a challenge for the environment to be able to keep in pace in that sense. So there is this transitional period. So there's at one end of the year, there's the transitional period of things very slowly growing. And then at the other end of the transitional year, that transitional point, the other end of the year even, is you've got that letting go. And I think that for us as human beings, that's what we could do with getting in rhythm with as well. And whether that is specifically in rhythm with the external seasons, or just with our day-to-day lives, is like, okay, so this is a transition period. And I know for myself, for example, at this moment in time in my life, quite a lot of this year has been a transition period. I feel like my autumn has actually been extended, and there's been a lot of letting go. There's a lot of change, a lot of pruning back in that process, and it's a transitional period. And I don't really know, haven't got the clarity yet as to what. Now, the old version of me, I'd have mourned, all of this stuff that I was meant to have done or thought I should have been, and these identities of who I thought I was and all of that. I'd have been desperately trying to hold on to them, or getting really upset about the fact that I hadn't got those. But in actual fact, having that transitional period and recognizing that, okay, I can grieve letting those go, but that grief doesn't have to last a long time. But transitioning through, and for me, it's about trusting. I know it's a bit corny, but it's getting as comfortable as you can with that uncertainty of moving into that next part. Is this making sense? Let me know if it's making sense, because I'm very aware that I'm rambling on a lot as these thoughts and these insights as to how to explain this are popping into my head. So let me know if this is making sense. Give me some thumbs up or some hearts. Or what would be fantastic is to know what your takeaway is from this evening's conversation. And it's really interesting. Yes, Elaine, I'm glad it's making sense. Brilliant. And thank you for your question. But it's really is about, if we see something as a closure, it's finite, then the human brain really doesn't like that, and it can really struggle. So when we recognize that there's this transitioning point, it's like there was one of the ladies I was working with today. We were talking about, I'm reaching forward, hence to grab a prop. We were talking about little steps, basically. And I used a pen as a prop, and I said, look, what your brain keeps thinking that you're looking to do. She was talking about letting go of her past. And I said, what your brain thinks that you have to do is that. If that's her past, your brain is thinking that you have to do that in one go. I said, but that's quite a scary thing to do for most people, to go from being so tightly holding on to the past and then letting it go is really quite challenging. But what my transitional invitation is just very slowly, just relax that, and then just, you might find that you can actually move that, and suddenly you can start to move these things, and it might be that you're not ready fully to let go, but you can move your palm upwards. And what was fascinating was I gave her a pen to play with, and she kept gripping it and kept saying, my gosh, how much energy am I using holding on to that? Holding on to that worry, holding on to that fear, holding on to that upset, that scaredness. And she said, and just relaxing, it's just all of a sudden this has got some movement in it. There's a possibility. And she was like, I like that idea of that transition is just that little bit at a time before it disappears. So does that all make sense? And Elaine, does that help? I know it was the question, and there was some other components in there as well. So I've tried to keep it very generic. So hopefully it answers all of those components within there. But give me some thumbs up. Let me know if it makes sense, and also specifically, what is your one takeaway? And just type that below. And even if you're watching this on the recording, then what is your one takeaway? What is it that you want to or need to know or have known? Takeaway. You can tell I've not eaten my tea, can't you? My brain's not engaging with my mouth. What is your one takeaway from this evening? And maybe even thinking about how you can use it as well. Let me know whether you're watching it live or watching it on the recording. Just type that below. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for understanding my waffle and that's going on. Shelley says, yes, perfect sense, and I can relate to it in my life. I think that, as human beings, we all, well, I don't even think it's as human beings. In nature, there is just this constant, I'm going to say cycle, because I don't think there is an ending, because there's always something that's coming up next. It's just always on the move. But as human beings, our psychology makes a meaning out of what we perceive as an ending. It's like the classic statement around just when the caterpillar thought its life was over, or was coming to an end, it turned into a butterfly, and something has to shift there for that butterfly to emerge. And that's what I'm wanting to get across this evening, is that endings aren't finite. They're a part of your transition into the next bit, whatever the next bit is, be that enjoying retirement, be that finding out what it's like to be on your own, exploring new friendships, new hobbies, whatever it may be. It's that transitioning into that next part, and giving yourself the space to close that book, to come to that closure for yourself where that's concerned. Elaine says, yes, it's helped. Fear of losing identity and focus is my worry. I've been told to have a plan, but I'm not getting my head around it. Security comes into it too. Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm very aware that for a lot of us, it's understanding that security tends to come up quite often around finances. So if that's what you need to look at first, then look at that aspect first, and then start to play around with that, and then see where you can go from there. But it's always worth having that idea, knowing the direction that you're going to be heading in. So I'm glad that you found that of value, Elaine, and that to me is a perfect example of somebody who messaged me with their question, got very clear on what their question was, so then I could schedule that in with the confidence conversations, and then have been able to answer it, and she's gained some insights and help. And not only that, what I think is great about this is that when you pose a question like that, is look at that, Elaine, Shelley has said it makes perfect sense and can relate to it in her life. So by you asking the question, you actually help somebody else as well. And I'm pretty sure that there are going to be other people that either message me direct on here or email me, jules@juleswyman.com, or put comments in the box below as to what they've gained from this confidence conversation. And it's a theme that was set by one of you viewers. And you can, if you have a question, then you can message me with that, and we can have a conversation. So I think that's about it. I'm only 3 minutes over. That's not so bad. But let me know if there's anything else. Put the comments below, and if you have a particular topic or theme, then do message me so that we can get this in your get this scheduled in for you. So take care of yourself, and if you want to find out more about the work I do, then head over to juleswyman.com, and you can find out more and contact me via there if you would like to look at working with me one-to-one, or booking me as a speaker or trainer for one of your events. And I look forward to speaking to you again next Monday, where our topic will be how to have honest conversations. So they're not. So it's about how to have honest conversations and the benefits of having honest and healthy conversations. So I look forward to seeing you next week, giving you some time to think over. You're very welcome, Elaine, and it's always a pleasure to hear from you. And I look forward to catching up with you next week. Take care. Bye now.